This woman gave a local waiter the fright of his lifetime. She came into the restaurant with her son and immediately started acting strange. She was clearly nervous, and her eyes kept following the waiter everywhere as if she secretly knew him and wanted to let him know. When it was time to pay, she refused to tip him. Instead, she wrote something shocking on the receipt. Mother refuses to tip waiter. When she's gone, he discovers what she has done. In the sleepy town of Rosewood, nestled between the great green arms of the Appalachians, there was a small family diner named Benny's. The diner was a time capsule, a slice of an America that existed decades ago. Its vinyl seats, chrome-trimmed tables, and checkered floor tiles were reminders of simpler times. It was a bar where hard-working men and women came to eat and relax. The jukebox in the corner played tunes from the 50s, and the scent of fresh coffee and home-baked pies perpetually hung in the air. In Benny's, amidst the clinking of cutlery and the soft murmur of customers, worked a waiter named Benjamin. He was a stalwart fixture, as integral to the diner as the vintage Coca-Cola sign hanging above the counter. An amicable man, Benjamin worked grueling shifts, tirelessly serving tables with an unyielding smile. A smile that was authentic but sometimes weary, a testament to his life's trials. A single father, Benjamin had his hands full, juggling his responsibilities of 2 jobs just to make ends meet. His life was a relentless waltz, spent shuffling between work, home, and the care of his 6-year-old son, Oliver. Oliver was his sun, his moon, and his universe. Despite the long hours and aching feet, the thought of Oliver gave him the strength he needed to keep going. Benjamin didn't particularly care for his job at the diner. The wage was barely minimum, the hours were long, and his boss, Benny, was a hard-nosed businessman who focused more on the bottom line than the well-being of staff. However, it was a means to an end. Because his education was cut short due to the coming of Oliver and then the quick passing away of his girlfriend afterward. She passed away in a traffic accident when Oliver was not even a year old. It was a horrible moment. He was devastated, but society did not allow him to grieve for too long. Because now he was a single father with bills to pay and with no formal education, his opportunities were limited. But despite his hardships, he brought an infectious warmth to Benny's. He knew regular customers by name, their favorite orders, and their life stories. Benjamin's kindness and sincerity were a beacon in the lives of many, adding a dash of human connection to their daily routines. One unusually quiet Tuesday evening, the bell above the door jingled, heralding the arrival of a new customer. The restaurant doors swung open, allowing a cool evening breeze to sweep across the room. The new entrant was a young woman, her face obscured by a wide-brimmed hat and a pair of oversized sunglasses. She had a little boy with her about Oliver's age. She didn't belong to the usual crowd that frequented the restaurant, most of them being regulars who knew each other on a first-name basis. No, she was unlike any other customer Benjamin had ever seen. She was dressed in an elegant charcoal gray coat and had an air of mystery surrounding her. The woman scanned the room before settling her gaze on Benjamin. She acknowledged Benjamin as the waiter and asked him if there was still a table free for 2. Benjamin told her that she could take a seat anywhere, to which the woman nodded with a polite smile. With an air of sophistication and grace, the woman maneuvered through the maze of tables, finally choosing a corner spot that offered a panoramic view of the entire establishment. As she took a seat at a booth near the window, the rest of the room seemed to fade into the background. With a deep breath, Benjamin straightened his apron and prepared himself to serve the enigmatic newcomer and her son. Little did he know then that this encounter would be the prologue to a new chapter in his life. He put the menu on their table and poured in some water. The woman put down her coat, and Benjamin fully expected a businesslike suit underneath. But as the charcoal gray coat fell off her shoulders and the sunglasses disappeared, a seemingly joyful and normal-looking mother appeared. Don't judge a book by its cover, Benjamin told himself as he walked away. The woman started perusing the menu with her son, her eyes darting between the items and the bustling room around her. As Benjamin watched the restaurant, his eyes kept falling on this unknown woman. There was something about her that he just couldn't shake. It was as if he knew her. The woman waved her arm in the air indicating that she was ready to order. Benjamin took a deep breath and put on his most welcoming smile. He approached the table, his notepad and pen at the ready. The woman barely glanced up as she placed her order, as if she did not dare to look at him. Her tone was curt, her words brief. Benjamin, however, was no stranger to such behavior. He took it in stride, smiled politely, and walked away. The evening wore on with Benjamin attending to his tables, his attention intermittently drawn towards the woman and her child. She seemed out of place, her eyes constantly scanning the room, her fingers drumming on the table, and her demeanor seemed nervous. Yet Benjamin kept feeling eyes following him wherever he went, and as he glanced over the counter, he saw the woman looking straight at him. He felt a jolt of surprise, his brows shooting up in astonishment. She quickly looked away, a blush creeping up her cheeks, her fingers nervously twirling around a loose strand of hair. He observed this with an increasing sense of confusion. Was there something on his face? He couldn't help but glance at his reflection in the shiny chrome of the coffee maker. Nothing unusual. Throughout his shift, he noticed the woman and her son, their eyes always on him. Their gazes were not invasive or judgmental, but rather, they held an unexplainable fascination, and awe, perhaps. And it was not long before he caught a glimpse of something more profound, a kind of emotional turmoil in the woman's eyes. As if she was struggling with something internally. They were done eating, so he cleared their plates, asking them about their meal. The woman managed a shaky nod, her eyes shining with unshed tears. It was then that he noticed her hands trembling. Alarm bells rang in his head, but before he could ask, she dashed off toward the bathroom. Concerned, he turned towards the boy, who mirrored the same nervousness his mother had exhibited. His small eyes were wide, gazing up at Benjamin with an expression akin to fear. Disconcerted, he patted the boy's head and returned to the counter, his mind buzzing with unanswered questions. Soon, the woman reappeared, her eyes redder than before. She quickly scribbled something on the bill, paid, and hurried out of the diner with the boy. Benjamin watched their retreating figures, puzzled by the evening's happenings. He picked up the bill, he frowned at the lack of tip. He even found himself speaking the following words just a tad too loud, "What a weird cheapskate." But that was before he saw what the woman had scribbled on the back. Because the other side of the bill held a surprise. He could see the woman's hurried handwriting, a small note scrawled on the back. His heart pounded in his chest as he turned it over, the world around him seeming to come to a standstill. And as he read what the woman had scribbled, the words hit him with the force of a freight train. His breath hitched, his hand gripping the bill tighter, the edges creasing under the strain. The bustling diner around him faded into a low hum. His senses numbed, and his mind focused solely on the piece of paper clutched in his hand. The bustling diner around him faded into a low hum, his senses numbed, his mind focused solely on the piece of paper clutched in his hand. He felt his knees buckle slightly as he leaned against the counter for support, his eyes scanning the words over and over again. He looked at the words as if trying to extract a different meaning from them. He stood there, the world around him continuing in its usual rhythm while he was trapped in a time warp. His heart pounded in his chest, the thud echoing in his ears, drowning the noise around him. He blinked, his vision blurring as he fought to keep his composure. Memories flooded his mind, pieces of his past that he'd carefully tucked away resurfaced, washing over him with overwhelming force. He felt a lump in his throat, the weight of the revelation pressing down on him. Because this woman was no stranger to him. He never saw her face, but yet he knew exactly who she was after he read the note, and this is what it said. The note started with the following words: "I'm sorry, Benjamin, I can't, and I refuse to give you a tip. Because if I did, it would feel like I was buying off a debt to you I could never repay." Benjamin was confused when he saw those words. What debt, and why did she know my name? He continued reading, and then all became clear to him. The note explained that this woman's name was Sarah and that she was the taxi driver who was driving his wife 5 years back. They got in a collision with a garbage truck when she was transporting his girlfriend that day. The truck wrecked the car but mostly hit the back of it. Sarah got away with a few broken bones, but his girlfriend wasn't so lucky. The news that the woman she drove did not make it wrecked Sarah. She somehow felt responsible but could never face the ones who were left behind. She tried today but chickened out right at the end. But the note did leave Benjamin with an address and an invitation to come over if he wanted to talk. Benjamin couldn't believe it and was shocked by every word. But he eventually did decide to head over to the address after work. Underneath a sky peppered with the first stars of the evening, Benjamin found himself standing outside a modest house, the address on the note clutched tightly in his hand. It was a small, quaint little place with a well-kept garden and a wooden porch. He took a deep breath, steeling himself for what lay ahead. His heart pounded in his chest as he slowly made his way up the path, each step feeling heavier than the last. He stood at the door, his hand hovering over the doorbell for a moment before he finally pushed it. The sound echoed through the silence of the night, the anticipation causing a lump to form in his throat. The door opened, revealing Sarah standing there, her eyes welling up as soon as she saw him. She was dressed in a simple shirt and jeans, her hair pulled back in a loose ponytail, her face devoid of any makeup. The glamour and mystery of the restaurant were gone, and instead stood a woman who was just as human as him. Sarah invited him inside, her voice barely a whisper. They sat in her modest living room, an awkward silence lingering in the air. After a few deep breaths, Sarah started speaking. Her voice shook as she began to tell him about the accident that occurred, the guilt, and the anguish she had been living with for the past 5 years. She confessed that it wasn't her fault directly, the accident was due to a mechanical failure in the garbage truck. But it was her car, her responsibility, and that made her feel guilty beyond belief. She explained how she'd also found out about Oliver and how the knowledge of him growing up without a mother made her guilt tenfold worse. Tears streamed down her face as she spoke about her own son, how he was about the same age as Oliver. She told him how the thought of losing her partner and the idea of having to raise him all alone scared her to bits. It was a fear that she lived with every day, a fear that was a grim reflection of Benjamin's reality. Sarah was crying, her body shaking with sobs. She told him about how she had wanted to reach out to him for so long, but her guilt and fear had held her back. She confessed how seeing him in the diner, seeing him continue his life with such strength and kindness despite his loss, had inspired her to finally speak. The confession left Benjamin speechless. He sat there, his mind swirling with thoughts and emotions. He knew he should feel angry, he should feel upset. But all he could see was a woman who was suffering, just like him. Without thinking, he reached out, pulling her into a warm hug. He forgave her immediately, understanding that the guilt she carried was a heavy burden. Sarah was taken aback by his reaction, his immediate forgiveness, and his kindness. She was expecting confusion, anger, and even hatred. But instead, she was met with understanding and empathy. Benjamin's kindness touched her deeply, bringing her more comfort than she had ever imagined. The burden she had been carrying seemed a little lighter, the guilt a little less overwhelming than before. Benjamin forgave Sarah, not just for her sake but also for his. He understood that holding on to anger and resentment would only poison his own life, and he had Oliver to also remind him of the good times with his partner. Not just what he was left with after the accident. He wanted to show his son that forgiveness was not a sign of weakness but a strength. And so, in the quiet confines of Sarah's living room, a new chapter of their lives began. Their conversation continued late into the night. In the following weeks, Benjamin and Sarah became unlikely friends. Their shared sorrow led to mutual understanding and comfort. Their conversations became a cathartic release, a place where they could voice their guilt, pain, and lingering regrets. Sarah found solace in Benjamin's forgiveness, while he found comfort in having someone who understood the depth of his loss. Their children, having bonded over shared toys and laughter, became inseparable. They were two boys who found a brother in each other, their innocence bringing warmth and light into their parents' lives. The four of them became really close, a newfound family built on shared pain and healing. In time, Benjamin's heartache lessened. His smile returned, no longer worn but genuine. Sarah's guilt faded, replaced by gratitude and hope. The sorrow that had once bound them now gave way to friendship, forgiveness, and love. Benny's Diner, Once just a place of work for Benjamin, now held a cherished memory, a testament to the power of forgiveness and the beauty of second chances.